Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning or good afternoon wherever you are. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar entitled How Will the Islamic Economy Benefit from a Unified Global Code for Islamic Finance? Organized by the Dubai Islamic Economy Development Centre and Dubai Chamber in strategic partnership with Refinitiv. My name is Mustafa Adil. I am the head of Islamic Finance at Refinitiv, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. This webinar today covers what I think is a very, very important topic in the Islamic finance space. For as long as I can remember, for at least the last 20 years, if not more, the Islamic finance industry has been talking about the need for standardization, the need for having shared set of rules and standards to help facilitate cross-border Islamic finance trade and transactions and to truly support the second stage of the evolution of the Islamic finance industry. And while a lot of progress has been made in different areas by multilateral organizations, areas such as accounting standards, governance standards, risk management frameworks, product structuring standards, the legal framework continues to be an area that is often overlooked, with different jurisdictions following their own legal standards and requirements, often varying significantly from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And this, is a very overreaching area because it is one of the main concerns that is consistently aired by different parties in the Islamic finance space, particularly from multilateral organizations, from international investors, and from those engaging in cross-border Islamic finance transactions. To tackle this area, DIEDC is developed an initiative for developing a unified global legal and regulatory framework codified for Islamic finance. This is an initiative that is being adopted as a strategic initiative by the UAE Ministry of Finance, and it's being supported by the Islamic Development Bank, who has actually come on board as a co-sponsor with DIEDC for the development and the completion of this unified code. And in addition, DIEDC has engaged with a number of key industry stakeholders at various levels. They have engaged with the Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions, IOFI, and they have also engaged Norton Rose Fulbright, which is a legal law firm well known to all of us in the Islamic finance space, for the actual development of these standards. This webinar, ladies and gentlemen, will bring together the industry experts that are actively working on this project in order to deliberate on why the code is required, why it's important, what will be its impact, and to address many of your questions that you may have around this particular initiative. But before we start, I would like to quickly go over a few very important housekeeping matters. We want these sessions to be as engaging as possible and have provided you a number of tools so that you can engage and connect with the speakers. Firstly, we will be asking a number of poll questions related to the topic so that we can get your view and your sense on these particular issues. These will appear on your screen as and when the polls become live, and you will have approximately 30 seconds to respond to those poll questions, and we will share your answers and we will get the speakers to comment on your views on these matters, right? You might feel in the poll that more than one answer is applicable, but what we would ask you to do is to please select the one that you feel is most relevant for the particular question that is being asked. We will also be sharing your questions with the speakers throughout the session. We have dedicated time for Q&A towards the end, and I will put as many of your questions to the speakers as I can. To access the Q&A box, please select the 3 horizontal buttons that are next to the big red X mark to activate your Q&A screen. And then through the Q&A screen, you can ask whatever questions you may have. And lastly, any technical issues you can address through the chat function. My colleagues Johanna and Dua will be happy to assist you on those. To access the chat feature, it is the circular icon with the chat bubble in it that looks like a WhatsApp icon as well. It's in the menu. It's right next to the 3 horizontal buttons. So you can access that to address any questions that are of a technical nature to our hosts, and they will be able to address those for you. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we are recording this session and we will be sharing this with all registered delegates. So if for whatever reason you are unable to catch any part of the session, don't worry, because you will be able to view the full thing through a live recording, which we will share with you after the session is done. With that out of the way, let's get started. And it gives me great pleasure to invite Abdullah Alawar, the CEO of the Dubai Islamic Economy Development Centre, to deliver his opening remarks. Abdullah, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. It's certainly a pleasure to be with you today here at the first Global Islamic Economy Summit Series webinar. Today's topic is very dear to the Dubai Islamic Economy Development Centre because it relates to an initiative that we've been working on for quite some time, and we're glad, as Mustafa alluded to a bit earlier, to have launched or started working and implementing this initiative that we anticipate will require the support of a lot of strategic stakeholders around the globe. But I think this series, and specifically the webinar today, will provide a very good opportunity for us to listen to your views. We are very interested in hearing the views of the participants today about the code and how it can assist, and what could be the challenges that we could face, or this initiative could face, and how to tackle it. So, of course, my colleague, Brother Suhail Zubairi, who's leading the project from our side in the DIEDC, will shed some more light, and some colleagues like Mr. Mohammed Faraja from Northern Rose. We are very excited to hear as well from our friend Mr. Amar Ansari of IOFI, and we really are excited about the initiative. I wanted to thank our colleagues at Refinitiv, of course, for arranging this webinar and for their long lasting strategic partnership with the DIEDC on the Islamic economy. I didn't want to take a lot of time, of course, talking about the initiative, because you will get to see a few slides on it from Brother Suhail. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for joining, and I wish you the best of discussion today.
Thank you very much, Abdullah, for your insightful remarks. And ladies and gentlemen, with that, it gives me great pleasure to welcome the panel that we have with us today. The gentlemen really need no introduction for anyone who's familiar with the Islamic finance industry. They've been active in the industry for many, many years. But I will take a quick moment to do a brief introduction. First, we have Mr. Suhail Omar. He's a senior advisor at the Dubai Islamic Economy Development Centre, and he advises on all matters related to Islamic banking, capital market, insurance, Waqf, etc. He has almost 20 years of experience in Islamic finance. We're all familiar with his work with the DIEDC, and prior to that with the Dar Sharia. We have Brother Muhammad Paracha, who is the head of Norton Rose Fulbright's Islamic finance practice in the MEA region. And obviously, Brother Muhammad has been working in the Islamic finance space, advising clients in a number of different areas, everything from product structuring all the way through to the establishment of fully fledged Islamic financial institutions. And we will benefit greatly from his expertise in this panel. And he's also leading the initiative from a technical perspective through Norton Rose Fulbright to develop these standardized framework. And of course, we have Brother Omar Ansari, the Secretary General of IOFI. And as you know, IOFI is the leading standard-setting body for Islamic finance standards in terms of accounting, governance, and Sharia standards. and Brother Omar has also been active in the space for many, many years, previously being a partner in one of the big four firms, and now as the Secretary General in IOFI. Gentlemen, we are really, really very privileged and honored to have you take time out of your busy schedule to be here with us today. And we are sure we're going to be getting a lot of questions that we will be able to pick your brain on as the session goes. But before we start the panel discussion, I think it's very important for us to have context around the overview of this framework and this initiative that DIEDC is running. And to provide us that context, I would like to welcome Brother Sohail to give us a brief presentation that will give us an overview of the initiative that has been championed by DIEDC that will be covered today. Brother Sohail, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mustafa. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Good morning, good evening. Well, this presentation will take you through give you the background of how it all started and where are we currently and where we would like to be. Trying to play this for lunch tonight. Just be with me. I'm trying to figure out. I need some help.
Sure. Brother Sohail, you see the four little dots, the thumbnail view on the left-hand side. If you click on that, you should be able to see all the screen. And then you should be able to select from that the slide that you want.
Yes. Okay.
Keep going down.
Yeah,
there we go. Perfect.
Right. So I would like to play these slides. So in that case, because they are animated slides, so how can I play? Normally, I play from the. Okay. Well, the perception that generally is found, from the very beginning that we are into Islamic finance. We have seen that the Islamic jurisprudence depends a lot on the intellectual opinion from the scholars. It means that if in a particular matter scholar A has given certain opinion, then it's not necessary that the scholar B will also be giving the same opinion. They will have different opinion. The other belief that normally the industry we have seen is having is that the standardization will actually constrain the innovation, and this debate has been going on for some time, whereby the supporters of the innovation normally put this argument that standardization will kill the innovation. But if we look at this great organizations, IOP, IFSB, and IFM, the organizations have been developing standards and the template documentation for some time now. Then that has actually broken the myth that the opinion is based on the intellectual ownership or the innovation will be killed by the standardization. Now, what we have at DIEDC, the result that we have here is that we believe the code is essential for the next generation growth. We have reached this far, but in order to take the industry to the next level, we need something solid, something robust, well-rounded statute, which could attract the virgin markets to enter into Islamic finance and then expand it further. We also believe that the code will also play a role in preventing the instances that we have seen recently. A particular institution reneged on payment, stating that the structure is not Sharia compliant anymore. It was Sharia compliant when it was launched, but no more. So the code will also take care of these kind of instances that you will not be in a position to see this kind of unfortunate events once the code is up and running. We do believe that definitely the differences will remain because it is healthy to have differences, but the differences will be reduced to a great extent and will be manageable. It will not be to an extent that we currently see. And then we strongly believe that IOP has already done a great job in creating the convergence. So where we are starting from a point of convergence already. We have tie-up with IOP, whereby their finished product will be our starting point. So going forward, we will see that this will be something that will be actually taking it to the next level what IOP has. Now this is the project milestones. As you can see, the DIEDC was established in December 2013. In the very first year, we conceptualized this project in 2014, and we took it to the Ministry of Finance, who actually adopted it, and the Ministry of Finance took it to the UAE Cabinet, who endorsed it, and then in 2018, we were partnered by Islamic Development Bank. On the feasibility side, once we have the endorsement from the UAE Cabinet, we conducted a holistic study whereby we saw where are the global regulatory landscape and how does it work. What does it take to do the global benchmarking? And also, we were satisfied from that conclusion, so we decided to proceed further. And we launched this project, Alhamdulillah, this year, and we appointed the consultant, which is Norton Rose Fulbright. Mr. Mohammed Paracha is with us as a panelist from NRF. And now we are in the process of selecting the advisory board. And I'll take you through what do we think the advisory board should be comprised of. And once the advisory board is set up, then definitely we'll start. The next stage will be to actually write the code. And for that, Mr. Paracha will explain to you how NRF intend to help us in developing this code. In the next year, second quarter, we expect that the code will be completed, all the chapters will be ready, and then we'll go through the necessary process, Sharia scholars, Sharia bodies, and then we will finally launch the code quarter 2 onwards in 2021. Well, we talked about the advisory board. In a glimpse, these could be the probable participants of the advisory board that we are trying to form, but not necessarily, this is not an exhaustive list. This is some of the important players that we would like to play the role of the advisory board, and we will also reach out to the other industry experts to join the advisory board. This particular slide gives you a little bit of flavor as to what exactly is the international benchmarking and what are the existing international benchmarks available. So if you see on the left side, the areas accounting, anti-money laundering, audit, banking and finance, corporate governance, the data dissemination, fiscal transparency, insolvency, monetary and financial transparency, payment systems and securities, and so on. The middle column will tell you what are the existing international standards and regulations through which different areas are being regulated and controlled. And on the right side, you will see the Islamic Finance. No doubt, IOP, IFSB, and IFM have done a great job in coming up with these standards, but more or less they are advisory or non-binding and voluntary in nature. In some jurisdictions, IOP standards have taken lead, and in fully or partly they have been adopted, so it's more regulated. But then in most of the jurisdictions, they are actually not taken as a full adoption or this thing. So this is actually the yeah. Here I will show you the just a minute, hold on. Yeah, this one. Yeah, next slide is this one. This slide is showing the key challenges. All of us know about these challenges, but there's no harm in just going through them one more time. Taxation, definitely we know that any sale-based contract does have a double taxation, and also the double land registration fees charged. So a lot of products cannot be undertaken in some jurisdictions. And we have the ineligibility for the tax rebate on the ijara, whereas it is given to the conventional mortgages. The taxation on rent under ijara is charged, making it more unfavorable for some jurisdictions. On the next point, the lack of consistency in the form of Islamic finance products and in the application of the international guidelines and the standards on them. And some jurisdictions, it has become a bit costly to actually get a Sharia approval and then the compliance process, the regular Sharia audit, and so on. It makes it complex and complicated. And the limitation is also there that there are some jurisdictional limitations that products developed in one jurisdiction cannot be freely applied on the other jurisdiction. Well, the Islamic banking does have challenges. Risk management tools incompatible with risks in the Islamic finance products, because normally the central banks in different jurisdictions apply the same risk management tools which are applied on conventional banks. And also the implementation of Basel III in IFIs is based on conventional approach, whereas the business model of Islamic banks is totally different than the conventional banks. The capital market, obviously Sukuk, continue to be classified as a DCM, although in Sharia, you cannot trade in debt. Supply of Sukuk falls short of the demand, lack of the private sector Sukuk issuances, absence of the secondary market either in OTC or through the bourse is very, very limited. Regulation is a lack of central regulation compared with the conventional financial industry, and that's how we took up this initiative to develop this code. And last but not least, the policies, the challenges in the designing and the implementation of monetary and macro-prudential policies for the cross-sector supervision, assess systemic risks, and close the gaps. Well, the next slide is very brief. It shows you the key objectives and the impacts that we expect from this. First of all, the objective definitely is to provide global legal benchmark for the Islamic finance, and then they dissolve regional differences in product offering and practices, and then they accord legal protection to parties entering into an Islamic context, very, very important, and we have seen we are failing on this. And also develop a strong international dispute resolution framework, which is also extremely essential. And on the impact side, once the code is up and running, we would like to see an elevated growth from the existing markets as the trust builds up in the system. So there will be natural flow from the conventional side to the Islamic side. Expansion of the industry from the new domain adopting Islamic finance, because they would definitely like to look for a properly regulated code so that they could implement that. Greater transparency, enhanced best practices, and the reduced costs will definitely be an impact that we will be looking for. And also the higher contribution to the overall Islamic economy on global scale, whereby the Islamic finance will be used to augment the halal industry and the other halal sectors like the Islamic lifestyle and so on. This snapshot will tell you the most important, the key dispute resolution forums. And we already have an International Islamic Center for Reconciliation Arbitration. And we believe going forward, maybe this center will actually be in a position to take the role of a global benchmark and set up branches in different jurisdictions, but just a thought at the moment. This will give you a quick snapshot of where the Islamic economy stands at the moment. This is taken from our SGIE 2019-20 report. And if you see on the right, the blue graph, it shows that current Islamic finance stands at 2.4 trillion, and we expect that by 2024 it will reach to 3.4 trillion, registering a 3.5% increase. So you can already see that the slowing down of the growth. There was a time that we were taking pride in mentioning about the double-digit growth, but it's no more a double-digit growth. It's been sort of slowed down. So we need the new jurisdictions to adopt Islamic finance to regain that erstwhile double-digit growth. This is the last slide that I'll share with you, and this is the conclusion: how will the Islamic economy benefit from the code? You see, Islamic financial system has shown resilience in several financial turmoil the world has gone through in the recent decades, and Islamic finance has stood tall in all those crises. And the endurance and the expansion of industry has taken place despite being fragmented and without any global central authority. So this shows the inner strength of the industry. Having proved its mettle mostly in the Islamic world, the time has now come for the Islamic finance to play its due role at the global scene. To achieve that, it is essential to package the system as a well-rounded and robust statute. Such a law will make it much easier for the new jurisdictional entrants to understand it clearly, if it is available as an off-the-shelf complete solution so that it can be enacted efficiently and smoothly. Otherwise, reinventing the wheel for those jurisdictions will be a hassle. As the industry is experiencing saturation in the established markets, the next generation growth can come from the non-traditional jurisdictions for which the court shall play a vital role. Without it, it will not be possible to expect the growth in the Islamic finance industry. In addition, the court shall serve as a uniting force for the existing hubs, thereby reducing the differences, managing the Sharia risk, and enabling inter-regional marketability of the products and services, which is not the case at the moment. Court shall accord certainty on the legal protection to the parties entering into an Islamic finance contract. They will be protected by the law, and their rights and obligations will be also safeguarded. Focused court-based tribunals and arbitration centers, making dispute resolution transparent, consistent, efficient, and cost-effective. Court should spur Islamic fintech innovation as well, since it could be equally applied in multiple jurisdictions if it is covered under this code. Overall, the code shall contribute to the time and cost savings, financial stability, greater transparency, and consistency in financial reporting, as well as improve public confidence. Thank you very much. So this is our dream at DIEDC. We'll be able to reach there with our stakeholders, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Brother Sohail. And you wrapped it up very nicely by saying this is your dream. It's a very, very far-reaching, very, very aspirational initiative, I have to say, covering so many different areas, requiring so many different stakeholders, obviously extremely challenging, but very, very important for the industry, and a very, very noble initiative as well. And, I think that, given that context, I'm not surprised that, this announcement of this initiative has been one of the biggest news for the Islamic finance industry this year, right? And one of the, what we call nowadays trending or hot topics in this space. And when you look into the details of this initiative, I think it's very clear to see why that is the case and the type of far-reaching impact that it can have, inshallah, once that it is done. Thank you so much for the presentation, Brother Sohail. And I think with that, we would move into the panel discussion. But before we do, I would really want to get the audience involved. We've heard, we will be hearing from the stakeholders, but let's hear from the audience and see what they think about this particular initiative. And for that, I would like to open up the first poll question for discussion to get a sense from the audience about their views. And our first poll question is, what will be the greatest benefit for a global Islamic and regulatory framework for the Islamic finance industry, right? And you guys have 30 seconds to respond. Please select one of the available options. The options are standardization and harmonization, or a robust dispute resolution framework, or a global benchmark for the next generation of growth for the overall Islamic finance industry, or legal protection for parties entering into the Islamic finance contracts. So, the question is, what will be the greatest benefit? I know all of these are benefits. All of these were highlighted by Brother Sohail in his presentation. But from your perspective, what do you think is going to be the greatest benefit for a global legal and regulatory framework for the Islamic finance industry? Again, the answers are standardization, harmonization, robust dispute resolution framework, global benchmark for the next generation of overall development for Islamic finance, or legal protection for parties entering into Islamic finance contracts. And I think the poll will be closing shortly, and we will receive the results for the poll, and I will put it to the panelists to comment on the answers and to comment on the perspective that we will hear from the audience. And while we wait for the poll results, I would like to remind you that please interact through the Q&A feature as well. You can access the Q&A feature by clicking the 3 horizontal dots that are next to the big red X box at the bottom of your screen. Activate the Q&A, ask your questions, and we will take it forward. And I'm just getting the answers of the poll now. And to the question, what is the greatest benefit for a global legal and regulatory framework for the Islamic finance industry? The biggest response is a global benchmark for the next generation of growth. 33% answered that, followed by standardization and harmonization, 25%, legal protection with 16%, and robust dispute resolution framework, 12%. So clearly a global benchmark for the next generation of development. And I think, when we talk about global benchmark, this mimics very closely with other initiatives that we have in, through institutions like LMA or institutions like the DIEDC for trade finance. A global benchmark goes a long way. So with that, let's open up the poll question. And Sohail, first question to you, not surprising, is to directly comment on these results. From your perspective, when you were going through this, did you envision this as being the greatest benefit for the industry? And, are you surprised that the audience has chosen a global benchmark for their answer?
Of course, we were expecting that. And you see, no industry that we look around is working without properly defined rules and regulations. Examples are the construction industry, healthcare, telecommunications, food stuff, and the list goes on. Isn't it close to a miracle that the Islamic finance industry has developed itself thus far without any central regulatory regime, and that too by beating several odds in shape of the string of financial crises that I earlier mentioned? Doesn't it show the inner strength of the system to have done that? I think it's a wonderful achievement. I would like to pause here and look for the factors that contributed to such growth. I find the political will of the governments of the Muslim countries who prefer using Islamic finance for their liquidity needs. I also discover passion amongst the Muslim population to get away from riba. And I also learned that the system is actually pro-business and makes a lot of commercial sense. But most of all, I see the main attraction is the fair play, whereby the odds are not heavily staked against one party, like in the conventional financial world, but are actually evenly distributed. And in my opinion, that is winning the hearts. Now, to your question, with such resilience and steadiness at the same time, it is also quite a quality to go by. Islamic finance going to remain confined to the Muslim world is the question, or does it have the element actually to be integrated into the global mainstream market? In my 3 years of serving at the DIEDC, I'm taking a bigger picture, which I can share with you, whereby the center has been able to successfully spread amongst geographies the message of Islamic economy, and within that, obviously, the message of Islamic finance as one of the main pillars which support the Islamic economy. As part of the DIEDC team, I've been involved in explaining, rather persuading actually, various government officials from different countries who either visit us here or we go to them and who intend to actually roll out the Islamic finance. However, unfortunately, after visiting us, they go to Malaysia, or they first visit KL and then they come to us, as if they're trying to weigh their options as to which brand of Islamic finance they should be opting for. At times, they get so confused that they shelve the whole idea. And who is the loser? Islamic finance is the loser. Now that Islamic finance is becoming a force to reckon with and attracting attention, in my opinion, such emerging markets should not be subjected to such a dilemma that which brand of Islamic finance they should look for. On the other hand, as you have seen comparable slides that I made in the presentation, the regulatory framework we are working on shall fill the gap on the Islamic finance side, on the right side, very comfortably. I'm very hopeful that the DIEDC initiative, fully supported by the UAE leadership and the Islamic Development Bank and the IOP, over time will catapult the Islamic finance to the mainstream global finance. And this is our dream. And hence the benefit shall go to the whole world. And the Islamic finance will benefit and everybody else will benefit. Thank you.
Inshallah, inshallah. No, very, very strong sentiment, Sohail, and it's good to see that traction is picking up, and I'm sure that this initiative will play a strong, role in continuing to enhance that. Brother Omar, I want to bring you in. I mean, obviously, from your perspective, as the head of an institution, one of the most widely accepted international institutions in Islamic finance for setting standards on accounting, governance, for Sharia, how do you see a global legal and regulatory framework supplementing or benefiting the standards that IOFI is issuing to create standardization, to create this global benchmark around? What's your views on that?
Thank you, Brother Mustafa. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Thank you, Brother Mustafa, for posing a very good question, and thanks to Brothers Zubairi and Abdullah Lawar for inviting us for this, not only for this event, but rather for the initial cooperation that we have already started with regard to this project. And in our last conference, we signed an MOU with the DIEDC as well for collaborating on multiple areas, including this one. The overall idea of having a global Islamic finance code is not new, but for sure we are so happy to have it, have this one being picked up by the DIEDC and taken forward. We are so happy about that, because we believe that this is something close to our scope, but not exactly our scope. We have been thinking on similar grounds and similar areas, and we believe that our work is for providing the foundations for this work, but still this is some function that needs to be done. And for sure, as I mentioned initially, that we are here to collaborate. We don't believe any of other institutions who are working in these areas of Islamic finance to be our competitors. We fully believe in mutual cooperation and collaboration. So that is the first part of my answer, that we, like my comments, that we are here for full support as and when which is needed. One part that is important is that you cannot take an elephant and try to pick and choose its trunk or its leg or its tail. Elephant is an elephant, and it's not about any industry or anything that you can just try to go and pick and choose. So this is one of the important things with regard to Islamic finance as well, that so many people have been trying to pick and choose. Some people believe that, okay, we are okay if the things are Sharia compliant, other things that we don't need to bother. Like governance, no problem, we can go for conventional. Accounting, we can go for conventional. And not only this, the biggest part is the legal framework. Okay, we can try to find some solutions within the given overall, what you say, that within the given overall framework, we can find some solutions, we can do some extra paperwork, we can do some what we call counter deeds, and so on. So we agreed as Islamic finance industry, we agreed for a lot of things that we can compromise on a lot of principles and try to just find our way by picking and choosing the minimum requirements that we believe are necessary for doing Islamic finance. I think it was not the right way of doing. Maybe it might be the right way of starting the things, but it's for sure not the right way of doing the things. For doing the things, you need to make sure that you have to grow up. You will not always be like in an infancy stage. And once you grow up, you will be having so many different problems with regard to, for example, the cases that are taken to the courts of law and the arbitration that might be needed. You are not prepared for that, and this is one of our biggest weaknesses. And we hope that this code can be helping us on this part significantly once it is available for adoption by different countries and particularly for the arbitration purposes, etc. One of the important aspects, brother Suhail, please, I would like to apologize to you because you use the term mainstreaming. For sure, you use the term mainstreaming in not exactly the manner that I'm concerned about. But what I feel that a lot of people use the term mainstreaming every time, and I have seen this thing happening at so many stages and so many conferences and so many regulators and ministers and other people I have been listening to them. Every speech includes a word, okay, let's put something about mainstreaming. Okay, we want to be mainstream. We don't want to be sitting in a corner. But at the same time, the mainstreaming should not be at the cost of compromising on our core principles, and it should not be on the cost of losing our identity, I would say. Not only the core principles, it's about losing the identity. So if I want to maintain my identity and still want to mainstream myself, I need a robust set of legal framework, standards in different areas of accounting, governance, regulatory framework, risk management, solvency, and whatnot. So whatever Brother Suhail has identified in different areas, I'm perfectly all right to follow some of the core principles coming from the conventional world. And yes, I'm not saying that I don't want to be in the mainstream. Yes, I want to be in the mainstream, but I don't want to be mixed up in the mainstream. I want to continue my identity. This is my core. And for this purpose, there are a lot of institutions that are working their part, and we are so happy that DIEDC is picking up this very important initiative with regard to having a proper regulatory code that can help countries first to adopt things, and then obviously this will help the institution in the longer run. Another important aspect that I would like to touch upon here is with regard to the particularly, I touched upon it earlier a little bit, but I believe the legal matters are a key. You have a regulation, you have Sharia standards adopted, but at times you are stuck. To be honest, at times we have situations where even the Sharia standards are there, even the central bank has some regulations, but once it goes to the court of law or once it goes to an international arbitration, you find out everything is dismantled and they are just talking about credit and lending. This is not Islamic finance's target. We are not here to just be considered for all practical purposes just a different type of banking which has a different paperwork. It's not about paperwork, and this thing I always say at different forums, that if you want to do just a different set of paperwork, you cannot make fool of Allah Almighty. And for people also, you can make fool of them for some time, but you cannot make fool of them forever. Some earlier or later, they will learn that you are trying to make fool of them. So even if it is a business opportunity, we need to be very clear on this part. Another very important aspect that I would like to touch upon is the newer markets, markets that are reestablishing. On a lighter note, I can share with you at times we say that a lot of war-torn countries which are into a disastrous state because of wars, etc., have adopted European standards. So on one side, it's like, at a lighter note, we can laugh at it, but we need to understand that the newer markets, and particularly those markets who are establishing themselves, have no capacity to do these things themselves. They are looking towards internationally standard set institutions, and they are looking towards something which is available to them, and they do not need to do everything from the scratch. Maybe the markets like UAE and Saudi and Malaysia and Pakistan, the regulators know a lot and they have good experience, etc. So in a nutshell, I would say that for the newer markets in particular, this can be significantly helpful. You can take it forward, and you can take it forward to the newer markets, and for them it will give a great opportunity. And that concludes my point that this all together, when you see, it will help us, I believe, but again, the point is working in collaboration. So I think that when you work with the governments and the regulators and the key stakeholders, you will inshallah see its contribution towards the development of Islamic economy. I think that I've taken too much time, so thanks. For sure, obviously, we'll continue the discussion and we'll see what questions come. But these are the initial thoughts that are in my mind. Thank you, Brother Mustafa. Back to you.
No, my pleasure, Brother Umar. And I always appreciate your passion and your genuine drive to support the industry and support its development, not just its development, but its development in the right direction. And I think your use of analogies was very, very apt in articulating the challenges that we face, and a lot of expectations on the shoulders of Brother Sohail and Brother Muhammad to get this right, to ensure that it is a foundation that can push the industry in the right direction, aligned to its true spirit. With that, Brother Muhammad, I want to come to you, and I want to pick your brain. I'm mindful of the time, so I'll keep the question brief, but I want to pick your brain on one or two specific things. One is, from your experience, you have been advising clients all over the world on Islamic finance, right? And you have a unique perspective on their concerns when it comes to regulatory frameworks, when it comes to legal frameworks and things of that nature, right? How far do you think a framework like this will go in encouraging them to get more involved in Islamic finance and to get more involved in cross-border Islamic finance transactions?
Thanks, Mustafa, for that, and you're absolutely right. No pressure on us at all. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be invited to address this forum. It's quite difficult being the third panelist to speak because everything that you want to say has been already said by two eminent speakers. But I'll try my best to give something new to the audience. I think my answer will be more from the perspective of market participants, as you rightly say. It's about the users of Islamic finance across the world, those that perhaps are familiar with it, and of course those that are new to it. I think what the code does effectively is to break down barriers. And I think in the globalized economy, in the globalized world that we all live in, breaking down those barriers and removing barriers to entry has to be the main driver here for cross-border market participation, because we live in a risk-based society. The regulators, the central banks in each jurisdiction are applying risk-based methodologies when they examine their local market, and part of that risk-based approach is to look at risks in the market of participating in different types of finance, and we have to work within that framework. And so when you look at that approach and consider that we are a subset, we are part of that global economy, one of the challenges has always been with market participants, this feeling of there being differences or uncertainties within how Islamic finance is practiced. And when you remove those uncertainties and bring certainty, which is what the code or the codification of project will do, that actually brings confidence amongst market participants. Now, when I sit down with a new entrant, could be a bank out of the US or Europe, could be someone from the Far East. The first thing that I'm going to do as a legal counsel is explain about how Islamic finance came to being. So we would have a conversation about primary sources, secondary sources, the Quran and the Sunnah, the Hadith, how those were then applied by the companions of the Prophet in terms of ijtihad, how the solutions were developed over the years using analysis or analogy, qiyas. So, you go into all this level of explanation, which we as practitioners all understand. That's how we've got from the start to hit where we are now. But when you sit in a room with a market participant and you have a conversation about conventional finance, I'm not going to sit into the room and actually sit down and talk to them about the common law. I'm not going to explain how we got from A to B to C. But we have to do that within Islamic finance because there's this mystery that surrounds it still in some people's eyes. So the greatest benefit that I see in helping market participants, cross-border market participants, is to remove that mystery, is to explain to them how they can operate Islamic finance. If things go wrong, how they can effectively use the code and use a unified approach to make sure that their rights are preserved and they're not abused. And again, we've seen, Brother Umar mentioned this, we've seen over the last few years many attempts where Sharia law issues have been brought into litigation. Right at the beginning, when I first started my career, we acted on Shamil Bank and Beximco. That was the very first case, which is still the Court of Appeal English law precedent for Islamic finance. And more recently, we have the Dana Gas issue. Sharia comes in one way or another, but what we want to do is, yes, we want to see Sharia references and Islamic finance references, but we don't want it to be used in such a way where actually the market participants that are in the industry and those that want to come in the industry feel nervous about it. So I think the code, in a summary, does help with all of that. And one point that I would just also wish to mention before handing back to you, Mustafa, is the very important point about bringing consensus within the global market, because this is very much a global project that Dubai has embarked on, and it's for everyone to be behind it and for everyone to contribute to it. I think it's very important in the world that we live in to realize that governments around the world are preoccupied with very big issues, whether it's climate change, international trade, cybersecurity, and of course, more recently, COVID-19. These are big picture global topics. The ability for anyone in a jurisdiction to effectively lobby a government and say, we want you to open up the country for Islamic finance. It's very difficult. We were very successful in doing that in the UK when we made these changes on the Bank of England committee. And that was a very interesting time for us when we did that. But how often are you going to be able to find that fact pattern going forward with these big issues? Governments have got parliamentary timetables which are packed. They don't have time. They don't have the resource. They don't have the technical ability. And when you don't have that technical ability, you put it on the back burner, if there is a burner at all to put it on. And so when you have a code and you have experts putting that together for the benefit of the existing industry, global participants, new entrants, it kind of takes that problem away from people, because it's then the case of lobbying those stakeholders and saying, we want you to be part of this. And the way to do that is to bring them on the journey from the beginning. Thanks, Mustafa.
That sounds very, very interesting, Muhammad, and I think you've placed it very, very well. And to add to Umar's points, it's not just, as he mentioned, some of the war-torn countries that don't have the technical expertise. You'll find some of the most developed countries around the world that would struggle because their systems are so complicated, the regulations are so complicated, and we know cases of that where, it almost becomes a non-starter to try to look at that because it's not a priority to invest that much time and effort in adapting that to that local market. Mohammed, before we move on, and I am mindful of the time, so I would ask all the panelists to please keep their questions brief. One of the key areas that is a point of potential concern is obviously the divergence of how regulatory and legislative frameworks work in different markets, right? Some countries follow civil law, some countries follow common law. They each have a very, very different underlying structure of how the law is interpreted. Will this code and this legislative framework that you're developing be something that could be adopted across markets regardless of what the core structure is? I mean, obviously modification is always required in every case, but how adoptable will it be? Because that becomes a major concern, and a lot of questions that are coming in are also linked towards that question of adoptability.
Yes, it's a very important question, and you're right. One of the challenges in this project is to work with many different systems of law, and you've highlighted common law and civil law. What I think is important to highlight right at the beginning for all participants here is this is a complex project. And we've been brought in because we deal with complex problems all the time, and the way to look at any project and any large project such as this is to break it up, and that's very important. Otherwise, you will become overwhelmed if you look at the end position right at the beginning. So what I would say in response to that question is yes, absolutely, it can be possible. I sat on the Bank of England committee. I went into those meetings with Her Majesty's Treasury. We drafted laws. That's a common law jurisdiction. Perfectly possible to bring Islamic finance into a common law jurisdiction. Now I'm based in the Middle East, which is a civil law jurisdiction, and it's a different methodology, but it's perfectly possible. What I think is important not to lose sight of is that when you break up a complex problem, you have to put it into smaller problems and smaller solutions. And so what we have in front of us, the road that we have ahead of us at the moment, as Sahel has mentioned, we're looking to target Q2 2021 here for this to be out in the market. So we have a phased approach to how we're going to deliver that. It's a method, there's a method behind this. And it's important that we deliver a unified code that the industry can be proud of, that addresses all of the concerns that have been voiced on this forum, but also other concerns that we are aware of within the core group. Once that's delivered, implementing it, when you have so many stakeholders who are part of the steering committee, will be a natural step forward after you deliver a code that is the unified code that we are working on. But yes, there will be challenges. Every country has got a different arrangement. And this is why DIEDC has spent a lot of time, although we haven't spoken about it because it's not immediately relevant, has spent a lot of time in thinking about how the implementation phase, whether through international treaty or domestic legislative approach, can facilitate the code in different markets. So, sorry, a bit of a long answer, and hopefully that explains. Whenever you ask a lawyer a question, they have to stretch it out because we used to get paid a penny per word, so we are trained intrinsically to
Yes, well, we judge, your contribution, to these initiatives by the number of words. So, thank you so much for sharing that insight. Definitely, very, very interesting. And, there's a lot we can talk about, but I want to move quickly because I want to get to the audience questions that have been coming in as well. But before we do that, I want to start the next poll question. And the next poll question is around this issue of having, potentially a trade-off between innovation and standardization and the level of development of the industry, right? So the poll question is, do you think the Islamic finance industry is ready to welcome a unified code? And the answers, the options you have are yes, it will provide global cooperation and increase cross-border trade. No, it's too early to codify as the industry is still in innovation mode. And C is somewhere in the middle, maybe some areas where innovation is saturated could be codified and other areas left open. And D, I'm not sure. So, we leave everyone to respond to that. And, for as long as I can remember, whenever the issue of standardization has been brought up, this counter argument of innovation and hindering innovation has been brought up. And I would love to hear the panelists' views on this as well. But before that, if we can take the pulse of the audience and to see really where they feel the industry is, and if we could see the results whenever they're ready. And I'm sure, Brother Umar would have faced this, or others would have faced this challenge when IOFI started issuing standards, when IFSB started issuing standards, when IIFM started issuing product structures, and proposed master service agreements and things of that nature. So if we can get the results, I would love to hear the panelists' view on this question as well. And it seems the results are just in a vast majority, 49% feel that the industry is ready for global cooperation, and another 20% feel that some areas could be saturated, could be structured, and the rest either say that it's not ready or it's not sure. Only 4% each. So, very, very strongly in favor of the fact that the industry is ready. I'll go to each of you to comment on this, and Brother Sohail, I'll start with you, but if I can please ask to keep your response as brief as possible, because I want to move to the audience questions straight after this. So with yourself, Brother Sohail, first, what is your feedback on this poll response? Brother Sohail, we cannot hear you for some reason.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Perfect.
All right. Okay. You see, what I said is that the poll result indicates or vindicates, what is our stance. And I personally believe it is now or never. And why do I say that? Is because of high-level commitment to the project by the UAE leadership. They have taken it upon themselves to deliver this code. The unrelenting support by the Islamic Development Bank. They are not only our partner, but also they are strategic support as well. But also the strong technical support we are getting from IOP. And most of all, the way the news has been welcomed by the industry. All of this shows that yes, the industry has been ready and in fact waiting for the code. And also it is always good to regulate and standardize for the benefit of all parties concerned. So in my opinion, yes, we are ready. And I think the poll has also showed that yes, the industry is also ready to receive the code.
Thanks, Brother Sohail. Brother Omar, same question to you. Just your thoughts on the response to this, and where you feel the development of the industry is it ready to receive this code, and it will not hinder innovation. Very, very briefly, your response.
Okay. There would be two parts of my answer. I would try to be brief, but the question is very important. The point is that being prepared is something different, and the need being there is something different. I think that industry important participants, those who think, who have the right mindset and who can understand the problems and things, they understand that there is a need. But is the industry ready to adopt it as of now? I believe it might not be correct. But yes, as I mentioned, and Brother Sohail also mentioned, that some newer markets might be the earlier ones to take it, and some even for some non-Muslim developed markets might be the first of the who can adopt it. But when we talk about general Islamic finance, those who think and who understand the issues, they understand that there is a need, but adoption, are they ready to adopt it, might not be that easy. And that is, I'm telling you, based on our experience of the standard setting side. Alhamdulillah, in these years, AOP has worked a lot, and now our level of adoption is by far more than any other body in this area. But still, we know that this is an issue. The second very short comment on innovation part, because the codes and standardization don't kill innovation. It's the attitude that kills innovation. For example, we have our Sharia standards available on Musharka and Mudarba since so many years. How much new innovation you are seeing on the Musharka and Mudarba side, particularly on the asset side? Rarely. So again, but there are new products coming in for which there is no Sharia standard as of now. So actually, for sure, we are working hard on developing standards on those areas. But like, for example, Wakala becoming more common than Musharka and Mudarba. So it's not the issue that standardization was killing the innovation. Actually, there was enough room for innovation, but people did not want innovation in that direction. And that's my unfortunate take on this whole issue. That at times, what we are feeling is that at times, when people talk about innovation, it's about bringing the things more closer to conventional, mimicking more and more products coming from the conventional side. There is a whole lot world available on innovation for the genuine Islamic finance products, which will help more the real Islamic economy, because I was seeing one of the comments on there coming here as well, that actually this part is missing, and for sure we believe that this is the right way to do. But I think that code is a need, and a lot of people who understand that there is a need, but market is ready. I believe it's not as of now, but for sure there is a need, and inshallah we will work hard to make it happen, inshallah.
Inshallah. No, thank you so much for that. And I think, yeah, the need, I think, is very clear for all of us to see, and different, I guess, jurisdictions will adopt it as they prepare themselves for that. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to open up the floor for Q&A because I'm very mindful of time and we're getting a lot of questions. And I think the first question, probably Muhammad, I can direct to you and maybe Sohail yourself as well. It's coming from Hussein, who asks, and again, gentlemen, please keep your answers very brief because of the time, but Sohail asks, what role will traditional fiqh play in the development of this new legal code?
Well, the shortest answer could be that in the advisory board, we have included the Islamic Fiqh Academy.
Mm-hmm.
So they will be also playing their role, and I think this is the best I can say that the legal code will have the elements of Islamic fiqh. And obviously, it is comprised of that. What else? So yeah, this is the answer.
Sounds good. No, and I think that also helps Brother Sohail to address another question which was raised by Homa around leveraging OIC. And that, and if you're saying that the Islamic Academy will play a role in this, I think that is where their role will come in as well. Muhammad, would you like to comment on this also?
Yeah, so we will be working together as a core team to make sure that the code is reflective of fiqh as applicable to modern banking. And the way that we are going to do this, there is an MOU with AOFI. That's very clear. So AOFI will be the set of Sharia standards which we will be relying upon as front and center, if I could put it that way. And when you look at how AOFI has been developed, and Brother Umar will know this better than me, but we have a preeminent Sharia board behind AOFI, which is reflective of many different key positions, many different schools of thought, madahib, which have contributed towards that. Many references throughout AOFI to things like majalla, classical jurisprudential provisions which make up how we look at modern banking. So traditional has to play a part, but we have to be, realistic, about how we're going to be using it in the modern context, and that's where our esteemed scholars will be playing a part, as Professor Hearn has mentioned, to make sure that we have something that really is world class and does demonstrate to the industry what a fiqh-based Islamic finance code looks like. So that's kind of the short answer.
No, that's very heartful, and I'm sure that it will do that, because it's always been a situation where we've just tried to fit the industry into the conventional framework in whichever market it's operated in. But no, that helps a lot. One question I want to put to you guys, and as part of the registration, a number of registered audiences submitted their questions in advance of this, and we selected a couple of them for yourselves to tackle as well. And I'll open this for any one of you three to answer, but Luqman asks, what is the consideration for sustainability and sustainable finance within your legal and regulatory framework? Have you given it any consideration or importance?
Well, Islamic finance by nature is sustainable. Mm-hmm. And if you see the principles, then definitely it supports sustainability, and it also supports the environment protection and also the social element. And when you see the screening parameters that are applied, I think over 3 decades now, almost, that those screening parameters provide guidelines for the socially responsible investment, which the world came to know later. Islamic finance has been doing it centuries ago as well, but now in a more formal shape, as we talk about the different indices, Islamic indices. And also the sustainability, we are definitely going to incorporate certain elements of sustainability already there, but we'd like to make it more highlighted. And this is a good point, thank you, which we will actually take it forward.
No, that sounds very, very interesting. And, of course, all of us understand the importance of sustainable finance in Islamic finance, at least in theory, and we're all, hoping for the industry to move more proactive in that direction as well. Another question that I have that has come from many, many different individuals, and a lot of people are asking this, so I'm going to combine the question asking in a way, and maybe, whoever wants to answer can respond. Basically, what they're saying is that Islamic finance practices, especially in established Islamic finance markets, are quite well entrenched. and there are discrepancies that exist between these markets that have not been able to be overcome for many, many years now, right? What can this framework do to help bring those discrepancies down and bring a truly unified Islamic finance framework? I know that we alluded to this previously as well, but a very, very direct question to all of you. And, to be clear and to play devil's advocate, we're not talking about, commodity murabaha being allowed in one market, not allowed in another. But when you get into the details, the amount of recourse that you have to a particular asset in case of, different scenarios will vary significantly in different markets. And those are quite well established regulations. So how will you tackle that to bring a unified framework together? I don't know, Mohammed, if you want to ask, because that's a technical.
Yeah, I was going to come in on that. So it's an interesting question. And as a legal practitioner, when I see a question like that, obviously I'm slicing and dicing it, in terms of the legal aspects. So let's look at recourse as your first or your last point, actually. Recourse is about security. It's about, what do you have recourse to if things go wrong? And that's a question of, each country that allows Islamic finance or any type of transaction, how have they set up their legal system to allow for recourse in certain circumstances? So that's not necessarily a question for Islamic finance, but that's a security law question. So whether, things go wrong, you have access to a pledge or a mortgage, or you have assignable property, and how you can then you realize and enforce against, let's say, a mortgaged asset. Is that going to be through self-help remedies, or is that going to be through some sort of public auction process? We're not looking to change any of that. That's all embedded in a country's history, its way of thinking, in how it's allowed these different doctrines and concepts of security to be developed over time. So recourse is not what this is about. What this is about is effectively breaking down those differences amongst Islamic finance. It's about looking at creating a common understanding, a framework which is deliberately used in the title here, which allows every market participant to understand how they can conduct murabaha, how they can conduct ijara, how they can do istisna. It's about this type of approach, how we can build in social impact into that. How does a ward work? How does an undertaking operate? What do we mean when we say wakala? This is what the code is about. It's the nitty-gritty, the nuts and bolts on how we function as an industry to make sure that we all are, first of all, talking the same language. That's very important, because often we're not talking the same language. So the code will allow us for the very first time to talk to each other with the same language. And we have many examples of that around the world with the LMA, with BAFT and other global organizations that have carried out similar exercises to standardize. And I think once we get to that stage where we have a code which does that, those differences should, I don't have a crystal ball, but those differences should start being eliminated. It will take time. No one is saying that in Q2 2021 there's going to be a switch, and we press that switch, and suddenly we wake up the next day in a completely different world. We're not saying that at all. This requires effort from all stakeholders. But someone here in the form of DIEDC, in collaboration with IDB, has taken that very important step to try and facilitate this. So, it should be given the opportunity to run its course, and we should all get behind it. And I honestly think when we do that, the entire industry, and in fact the global communities that want to transact with one another using Islamic finance benefit.
I would like to respond to one question from Muhammad Ali Ahmad Osama. He's asking.
I was going to.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, actually, what we plan to do is that once the code is ready and all the approval process has been covered and completed, then we would like to launch it through the international treaty. And the international treaty, once it is launched, and before that, obviously, there will be a lobbying time frame. And as soon as the treaty is launched, the signatories, the countries who will be the signatories to the treaty, will be responsible to apply the code in their respective jurisdictions. And I would here like to also mention about Brother Umar's point about the new jurisdictions may be more receptive to this code because they do not have Islamic finance already established, and they are looking at it compared to the ones where you've established centers where there might be some kind of resistance because they are already used to their existing practices and systems. So this could be a possibility that the support to the code may come initially, this is my own personal opinion, it may come initially from the new jurisdictions rather than the established ones perhaps. But we'll see how it goes.
No, thank you very much for that. I think that is very clear. And inshallah, we hope that the treaty will get broad adoption. And to Brother Muhammad's point as well, I think, as we have seen when the principles of BATF were launched and the standards are subsequently launched, we saw the trade finance industry kind of converge on agreed upon practices, principles. We hope to hopefully see the same happen in Islamic finance through the issuance of this unified codes. I have two more questions, very, very quick questions that I will ask. One from Javeria, she is asking basically around instruments like Qard al-Hasan, which historically was very, very significant part of Islamic finance, but in today's industry is kind of become a side product. What importance or significance will the framework give to instruments like Qard al-Hasan and bring about more uses for them than the current use that is being used by Islamic banking industry?
Yeah, can I, first of all,
please.
Qard al-Hasan is not a product. Islamic finance is pro-business. And Sharia encourages us to invest the money and aim for the profit. Qard al-Hasan is something that you actually extend. It's a benevolent loan that you extend to somebody who is in need, and he may or may not return to you. So using Qard al-Hasan for a commercial purpose, obviously it is out of the Sharia bounds. So Qard al-Hasan is very, very clear that different institutions give Qard al-Hasan, but they are actually doing it on a more sort of social responsibility basis. They're not doing it as a product. They're not allowed to take any income out of that. In some cases, I've seen that they do charge some kind of fee. In fact, that fee is also not properly Sharia compliant. Admin fee you can charge to your commercial customers. But when it comes to helping the poor people, the people who are in need, you are actually not required to charge them anything. So Qard al-Hasan is a commercial product.
Sure. No, thank you. I think very, very direct response there. The final question, because I am mindful of time, and I'll direct this to Brother Umar, is a question from Muhammad, who is saying that he's been following the Islamic finance industry for many years, and he doesn't see the impact on the real economy. Right now, that is something that obviously could be debatable, but there is this perception that they feel that Islamic finance is focused only in consumption areas like automobiles or goods or real estate, etc. Right? And what he's asking is, with this framework coming out, with a broader spectrum being introduced and principles being aligned, will we see more of the influence of Islamic finance on other sectors in the real economy? So your perspective, and generally your perspective on how Islamic finance should be playing a more proactive role in the real economy per se.
Thank you, Brother Mustafa. And this question and this observation is close to my heart. I also asked this question to myself and other brothers. But there are two parts of this question. Again, everything cannot be seen on the face of it. You need to go for two parts. One part is about, it's not only about Islamic finance, it's about even the jurisdictions, the economic policies. Like, for example, I'm talking about, like, for example, in Bahrain, very limited industries are there. And although the government is not trying to promote some industries, but still because of the size and very small size and other jurisdictions close to it, neighboring jurisdictions have some industry which is needed. So maybe the need is very limited. So if even the whole country is running on oil and services, then what type of expectation you would have from the Islamic finance to support? So Islamic finance would generally support the activities that are generally going on. So this will happen in all countries, but if you come to Sudan, if you come to Pakistan, if you come to Turkey, you will find so many industries being supported by them, which is the genuine activity. With regard to the second part of the question, where we talk about the social aspect of finance, and this has a link with the earlier question as well. So I'll touch upon it, that either if you give Fard Hasan without any charge, or if you support some of the industries, not on commercially, but rather on social basis. So both of them are our target. They should be our target. AOP has been always developing standards in these areas for encouraging the institutions to follow that. Our ethics standard, our corporate social responsibility standards, they are all supporting these ideas, but we need to understand that it's working on a commercial model. Means that the bank, for that 90% of the money or 80% of the money, bank is mudarib or wakil. So bank has also obtained that money for earning profits. Even when I go to bank and I deposit my money, I also want a return. So I am giving my money to the bank for the return. So banks are not social finance institutions, they are commercial finance institutions. Still, we highly encourage them to have the social finance element because it is the core of Islamic finance. But we believe that because of this model that they take money from one part of the segment of the society who have surplus money, and then they take it on the presumption that it will be invested in profitable avenues, and then they invest and they live in an economic policy of the respective jurisdiction, they cannot change the whole picture altogether. So I believe that there are some institutions who are doing good within this framework. Some need to increase their efforts. And as AOP, we are working on this part as well. And additionally, we are working on supporting the concepts of Islamic social finance. We are working on Waqf standards. We are working on newer areas of fintech, etc., that can be used more in this area. And we believe that Islamic crowdfunding and the new fintech technologies can be an even better model, because the banking model, we need to understand, is meant for a specific purpose. Okay, conventional model is lending and borrowing money, but our model is getting money from the surplus resources and investing it into profitable venues. This is the banking model. So this banking model can be molded a little bit, but it cannot be changed altogether. And for that change, the Islamic economic system has other tools which we need to exploit.
No, I think that sounds good, and I think it's a apt response to the question. And we have to be realistic about, the objective of Islamic finance and the objective of Islamic banks in particular, and their role in the broader ecosystem. Gentlemen, with that, I would like to bring the session to a close. If you would have any closing remarks, I would give each of you maybe 20 seconds each to give your closing statements, and then I will close the session with Brother Sohail. I guess we can start with you and then move through with Brother Muhammad and Brother Umar.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very happy with the comments that have come, and they're all supportive of this initiative. And DIEDC has been working on this for a long time, and I think this is the long homecoming. And I think the time wouldn't have been better. This is the time that we do it, and if we have started now, we can see gradually in the next 3 to 5 years, this code will inshallah catapult Islamic finance to the, again, mainstream, but without compromising on any Sharia principles. Thank you.
Inshallah. Brother Muhammad?
Yeah, just very briefly, I think we're very excited about this. Brother Sahel and my team are working very closely together in delivering this with DIEDC. We're looking forward to developing an internationally accepted best practice legislation here, which will serve the purposes that are right. And we are looking forward to the next stage. It's for everyone to be participating in it, and through initiatives through DIEDC over the coming weeks and months, the opportunity will be given.
Thank you, Brother Muhammad. And Brother Umar, your closing remarks.
Thank you for inviting us and being part of this whole initiative, and we are excited about it, and we are willing to offer all support that we can provide for this great project, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you so much, everybody. And I would like to thank all the speakers for their participation and sharing their insight. It was very, very insightful and very valuable, I'm sure, for the audience, and to commend you on the noble work that you are doing to support our industry and to drive it forward, inshallah, to be more developed and to be more aligned with the true principles of Islamic finance and of Maqasid al-Sharia. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us and for sharing your questions. We will be sharing a recording of this webinar with you, and we will love to hear your feedback and your comments. After you close this session, you will also receive a short survey. We would love to for you to fill that out so that we can improve our webinars going forward. And I would like to remind you that we will be hosting our next webinar in 14th of July, what will be the new normal for the halal industry post-academic as part of the GIES series. So we would love to welcome you back for that. And in the meantime, I hope that you stay safe and you and your loved ones stay healthy in this time of crisis. Inshallah, Allah lifts this difficulty from the Ummah soon, and that inshallah we will have prosperous days ahead. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for joining us.